I told you to keep your eye on the federal courts and the state attorneys general. Donald Trump may be out of office, but the 226 federal judges he appointed are still on the bench. One of those judges, responding to a complaint by the Attorney General of Texas, has put a temporary halt on President Biden's executive order freezing deportations. See, this is exactly what happened to President Trump. Where there was a lot of lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits in some cases. This appears to be legitimate, but this is what needs to happen, quite frankly. And I'm grateful that the attorneys general of the states are out there putting up a resistance and defending the Constitution, defending the rights of the states. Joining me to explain what took place here, the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton. Ken, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony, great to be back. Thanks for having me on. This is clearly a pretty important topic.
Yeah, explain it to our listeners.
So we actually had an agreement, the state of Texas, and I think a few other states had an agreement with the Department of Homeland Security that they would not make any major moves in immigration policy without involving us, without informing us, without participating with us in discussions. First day you saw it, executive order says that all deportations are stopped. So we filed a lawsuit within 3 days of his inauguration, arguing, one, that they violated their agreement with us, two, that he's violating federal law because he has an obligation as president to enforce existing law, which requires that he follow immigration law. And if somebody's here illegally, he's supposed to deport him. And then third, he's violating the U.S. Constitution because he's not executing the laws as he's required to do under the Constitution. So, I mean, they're not really that complicated of arguments, but they're really important for the functioning of our government.
And I would assume that some of these other executive orders are also wide open to legal challenge, where you have agreements, contracts in place, and all of a sudden you have somebody come in and say, we're not doing that anymore, and just by executive order canceling it.
Well, that's exactly right. The problem we have is he's issued more executive orders or edicts, whatever you want to call them, than any other president at the beginning of his administration. And so there's so much to review, so much to look at. I'm hopeful that other states will step up and file lawsuits as well because, every state has some resources, so they can do some of this as well.
So Ken Paxton, let me ask you that question. Do you think this is a blitz, an intentional blitz to try to overwhelm the states from being able to fight back against these overreaching executive orders?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a timing issue. I think the combination of sort of how the Trump presidency ended with that craziness going on, and then,
right,
the next throwing all of this at us at one time. I think it's designed to sort of soften the resistance and make it more challenging for people to want to fight.
So, General Paxton, I think there's several good aspects to this. Certainly not the executive orders, but the fact that we have state attorneys general like yourself that are willing to fight these things, but also we have a landscape in the courts where we now have all of these federal judges, not all of them, but a lot of them, that are constitutionalists who are simply looking at the Constitution and the action, and that goes to our benefit.
No, that's absolutely right. We're in a better position, way better position than we were 4 years ago or 6 years ago when I started as Attorney General of Texas. I was filing lawsuits against Obama. I filed, I think it was 27 and 27 months. But we were up against courts that were not as focused on the Constitution and law, and we had a lot more judges that were looking at policy and their own interpretation of what they wanted to happen. We've got a much better situation. So I'm encouraging other attorney generals, particularly Republicans, to step up and get in the game. Let's not let this go by without a fight.
So how can our listeners help in that effort?
Well, I think just encouraging their attorney generals to get in the fight, find ways to push back, find ways to file lawsuits to slow this down, and then hopefully stop some of this really bad stuff. Because once we let this precedent stand, if we let the precedent stand where the president becomes basically a dictator without any control of Congress, Congress should be the one passing these laws, then we have set precedent that may be hard to ever undo.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, General Paxton, I want to thank you for leading out there in Texas and showing other attorneys generals how to get it done. Thanks for joining us today.